Good morning, friends and enemies. Welcome back into the game-by-game recap of Week 16. As we always do, every single Monday, we recap everything that happened in fantasy football from every single game of the previous slates. We have a lot to talk about. A lot of big games, a lot of big performances, a lot of injuries as well heading into the fantasy championship week. So if you made it out of this week alive, some of your players might be dead, and we got to figure out what to do going forward. A lot of running back committees, all that good stuff. So as always, we're going to go game by game. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the button that looks like this and subscribe to the channel. We'll be doing our normal content schedule for this week. Waiver wire tomorrow, running backs on Wednesday, and wide receivers on Christmas Day. Shout out to me for working hard. We'll start on Thursday Night Football, where we had the game of the year, one of the games of our lives. Seattle comes back and wins 38-37. Now, as always, these are fantasy takeaways. I won't get into the minutia of every single play that happened. There were plenty of them that people who just cover NFL podcasts in particular can spend hours on. But what we care about is no Davante Adams. Puka Nacua goes nuclear, 12, 225, 2 touchdowns. I obviously expect him to be a league winner if you made it to your championship with him on your team. The backfield was continuing to be a little bit of a split, but very much in favor of Kyren Williams, 23 carries to 14 for Blake Corum. Unfortunately for Kyren owners, Blake Corum ends up getting into the end zone. I think this was a lot more noise than actual signal. You have Stafford thrown for 457 and 3 touchdowns. Like, you're going to tell me that as the starting running back, you get 29 opportunities, your team scores 37 points, you don't score a touchdown like that. It's a brutal run out for Kyren owners. But next week, they do play the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta in a dome. Bounce back spot for Kyren. Stafford doing this without Davante Adams was insane. Don't expect to have Davante Adams back next week, but maybe he pushes it to play. Colby Parkinson, huge letdown. It was like fantasy's worst kept secret last week that he was a great streaming tight end option, which is kind of what made me fade him a little bit. I don't think there's any rhyme or reason or consistency behind anyone other than Puka. On the flip side, Seattle played pretty fucking poorly for the most part outside of Kenneth Walker popping a big play or two early on. First half, they got almost nothing going. Second half was all Darnold, all JSN, who finishes with a big one. You know, people are going to be like, I was right on Kenneth Walker. It's like, this has been the same shit all year. It's like once every 5 games, he has a good game, and then it's like, oh, we're back. And then when you look at any of the actual numbers here, despite, like, that's what Kenneth Walker is. He makes big plays. He's an explosive player here. But if we look at week 16, Zach Charbonnet still outsnaps him 56% to 43%. So nothing new here. It was great to see Kenneth have a big game. And if you were still alive somehow in your semifinals and had Kenneth Walker, 11 for 100 on the ground. But even that, 11 carries, 9 carries to Charbonnet. He gets into the end zone, has 64 yards through the air as well. So a big one there. Any given week, he's viable to pop off for a huge game. But this is just the split that they are clearly going with here. Moving on to the Eagles and the Commanders. Honestly, this was just like Commanders kind of hung in for a bit, but their defense is just so abysmal that Philly was kind of able to do whatever they want underneath. Saquon has a big game on the back of a 48-yard touchdown run. A.J. Brown continues a dominant streak here, 9 for 95. Jalen Hurts plays all right. They didn't really have to do much. Devontae Smith gets into the end zone. Goddard gets into the end zone here. Not much to take away from the Philly side of the things. They do play at Buffalo next week, which is a really big game in terms of just like, you know, two Titans kind of clashing there. We'll see if they can keep the successful ground game going against Buffalo, which is obviously weak against the run. They also get some, I think, reinforcements back next week. I believe they'll get Lane Johnson back. I believe they'll get Jalen Carter back as well. So Philly should be at full strength versus Buffalo next week. Washington, on the other side, definitely not at full strength because Jaden Daniels is obviously already out. Marcus Mariota banged up. He has multiple injuries that he's dealing with, which might lead to Josh Johnson coming in and starting Week 17 against Dallas, which honestly, as like someone who owns a decent amount of stock in Dallas players, I don't love that. I feel like Dallas is going to beat the shit out of Washington and then just not even have to play in the second half. But there's a very real chance that we do have Josh Johnson starting under center against Dallas next week. So if you've been a super flex team that's been running out Marcus Mariota, I would just make sure that you have some sort of secondary plan behind him. If so, the backfield went right back to what it was prior to Chris Rodriguez missing last game. It was 55% of the snaps in favor of Rodriguez. and 25% for JCM, 25% for Jeremy McNichols. But as I said, they do get Dallas next week, which is a really good matchup. So I do think Chris Rodriguez is like semi-flex worthy if you are really desperate, probably outside of PPR leagues. Would have loved to have seen another run back from JCM getting a heavy workload. He was really involved in the first half, but they kind of just like faded away from him in the second half, unfortunately. That was the Saturday game. This was the second of the Saturday games. Another fucking incredible game here. Bears come back, win it in OT, thanks to Caleb Williams' fucking seed to DJ Moore in overtime. Bears win it 22-16. The story of this game for Green Bay was just more injuries here. So you have Jordan Love. He basically took like a fucking Randy Johnson fastball straight to his face. He got absolutely destroyed by a blitzing Bears player, took a helmet shot straight into the face, left with a concussion, did not return. So I would put him at a 50-50 chance to clear for week 17. Green Bay plays they play at home against Baltimore. So big game for them. Every game's big for them now that they are, underneath the Chicago Bears here. So don't know if we're going to get Jordan Love. They do get one extra day in the protocol to clear here because they played on Saturday. So we'll see if that matters at all. Malik Willis filled in, and Malik Willis has been a really, really respectable backup for the Green Bay Packers, but we do know they go super run heavy when Malik Willis is the quarterback. Malik Willis, I think, banged up his shoulder as well at the end of this game, and Matt LaFleur came out and was like I'm not going to say pessimistic, but he wasn't like overly optimistic about Malik Willis. He's like, we're going to have to learn more. So I think there's a chance that both Jordan Love and Malik Willis miss this game against Baltimore, which would be obviously terrible news for them. I don't even know who their quarterback 3 is, but you're not going to want to start many Packers if they're without those top 2 quarterbacks. The backfield was a bit of a mess because Josh Jacobs was like DNP'd all week, ended up playing. Hard to tell if it was like a pure re-aggravation of the knee injury that he's been dealing with, or they would just on a snap count. He ended up fumbling a ball, came back in for one play, and then like didn't play again towards the end of the game. Obviously, if Josh Jacobs is healthy, they're not giving Emmanuel Wilson more carries. But as you could see, Emmanuel Wilson 14 carries for 82 yards. He was good in this one. Malik Willis 10 carries. That's the kind of mobility he brings to the offense. Obviously, Josh Jacobs 12 carries. Christopher Brooks was getting in on some pass catching downs. So it's a little murky right now whether or not Josh Jacobs like fully re-aggravated it, but the snap counts are very clearly not there for him right now. 39% for Jacobs, 46% for Emmanuel Wilson, 21% for Christopher Brooks. So we'll have to just kind of keep an eye out for practice reports. Obviously, if Josh Jacobs, I think Emmanuel Wilson is somehow owned in fewer than 50% of leagues on Sleeper, so he is a must add for your fantasy championship if he is available, because he'll likely take over as the workhorse. The wide receiver split, extremely messy. Watson did get back onto the field despite being in the hospital last week. Does have a team high in targets with 6 of them. Ties Dobbs with 6. He has the big game, 5 for 84. Jaden Reed actually ran like 85% of the routes in this one, so he was the highest participation rate in terms of routes run, but only walks away from 3 for 35. Obviously, without Jordan Love, this offense is going to struggle to make explosive, even though, again, Malik Willis has actually been super good, so I don't even want to go as far as saying they can't do anything through the passing game, but obviously, it is a downgrade to the passing game, and it's very hard to trust anyone as more than like a shaky flex in this offense if Jordan Love is not out there. Flip side, Caleb Williams played, I'll say, not great in the first half. Played a lot better towards the end of the half. Still a little bit of inconsistency in this passing offense, but all intents and purposes, really good game for him. Swift and Monangai, just clear backfield split once again. Nothing new there. Receiving group here. DJ Moore walks away with the big game, 5 for 97 and a touchdown, thanks to that 46-yard touchdown grab in overtime. This was a game without Rome Odunze. This was a game without Luther Burden here. So, someone had to kind of eat here, I guess. A lot of people, I think, started Colston Loveland thinking that the target share would move in his favor, but unfortunately it did not. Only 3 for 30 there, so kind of disappointing day. Nothing else to really take away from here. If Rome and Luther Burden continue to miss time, I feel pretty damn good about DJ Moore, so I would continue to fire him up. Moving to the Bills at the Browns. Josh Allen gets hurt, leaves the game with a foot injury, ends up coming back, but just has a really, really poor all-around day for fantasy. I think it was his lowest fantasy scoring day since his rookie season or something like that. 130 passing yards, 0 touchdowns, 17 yards on the ground. The story of this game was just James Cook, obviously. 117 on the ground, 2 more touchdowns. He leads the league in rushing yards right now, so he's a stud in your lineup every week. No one else in the Buffalo receiving core can be said the same for. Flip side of things, Shedeur Sanders. Another not great game in the box score, at least. 157, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Takes 2 sacks. I think the story of this game was obviously Quinshon Judkins just kind of snapping his leg there. It is a fibula fracture, I believe, an ankle fracture, a leg fracture. They are still waiting. So the difference between whether or not he'll be like purely good to go for next year, this is obviously more of a dynasty conversation, is whether or not there are knee ligaments involved. So right now, if it's just like the ankle and the leg fracture, this is like a 5 to 6 month recovery timetable. So you are looking, training camp, OTAs, like he could be back for that. If there's knee ligaments involved and there's like an ACL tear and that needs to be repaired, obviously you throw that into the mix and now you're looking at a very, very elongated return from that recovery. So we'll have to wait on what the MRIs and what the, x-rays say about Quinshon Judkins' knee. Unfortunately, it was just like, a great rookie year for the most part, I would say. Just, raw, like Judkins, I think the Browns have a hit on their hands. We'll put it that way. Not like his numbers weren't overly efficient, obviously, but I think a lot of that has to do with just the overall offensive situation, the offensive line just being extremely fucking banged up right now. So I would go as far as saying, like, if I'm in a dynasty league and I can buy Quinshon Judkins low, I would think about doing it right now. Very young, very, good running back, obviously. Now, Harold Fanning continues to be fucking dominant. He's awesome. He's going to be a stud for years to come. Has a big game, 2 touchdowns, 1 on the ground, 1 through the air. He'll continue to eat as long as David Njoku is out. Him and Shedeur have a real chemistry. In place of Quinshon Judkins, I believe he left in the second quarter. And you have Raheem Rocket Sanders take over. Remember, Jerome Ford is on the IR. Dylan Sampson has now missed back-to-back weeks with a calf strain. So you have Raheem Sanders and Travion Williams. Travion Williams was like almost like a depth chart special teams guy for Cincinnati for a while. He was almost like a scat back. If y'all remember him in his Texas A&M days, they pretty much split the backfield in terms of snaps like evenly. So after Judkins left, you had 31% for Travion, 30% for Raheem Sanders. Sanders was the runner here, though. As you could see, the rushing attempts number heavily in favor of Raheem Sanders, 11-3. But then Travion Williams was the guy long down and distance, 90%, 2-minute drill, 100% of those snaps. So we're going to be looking at some sort of split committee if Dylan Sampson does not return. I think Raheem Sanders should probably be owned. They do play Pittsburgh next week at home, so not an overly easy matchup by any means. If Dylan Sampson can return, I do kind of like him in this role because I think they'll let him kind of run that workhorse role with a little bit of these other backs sprinkled in here. So keep an eye out for Dylan Sampson practice reports. Raheem Sanders is a guy you can pick up, but not like someone I'm trying to get into my lineup in fantasy championship week. Chargers and Cowboys. Don't do that. Don't do that. The Chargers take down the Cowboys 34-17. Herbert has an awesome game, 302 through the air, 8 for 42 on the ground. Quentin Johnson comes back, 4 for 104 and a touchdown after missing last week's game. One of the storylines here, minimal storyline, but kind of matters, I guess, for fantasy, is Trey Harris is now running the same amount of routes as Keenan Allen. And they both had 5 targets. Trey Harris, 4 for 54. Keenan Allen, 5 for 44. Trey Harris was their second-round rookie pick in the NFL draft this year. Like to see him getting a little bit of a hot streak going towards the end of the year. Maybe we can get that mojo going into 2026 there. The backfield is the bigger story. Amari Hampton kind of pulled away here, especially at the end when Kamani Vidal left the game with a neck injury. We don't have the severity of the injury, but Amari Hampton looked great in this game, albeit it was against the Cowboys' run defense. But if Vidal misses time, Hampton is a smash play. They do play Houston, so it's not an overly easy game, but we just did see what his co-rookie Ashton Genty did against this Houston run defense. Hampton looks like he's kind of getting primed back to what he was in the beginning of the year. So if Vidal misses time, Hampton is that guy, and I even think that he's probably pulling away with the starting role as we speak here. On the flip side, Dallas just didn't do enough. Couldn't get it going in the ground game. Pickens exploded here. He was awesome in this game. But yeah, I mean, their defense just isn't good enough. Their ground game wasn't good enough in this one, and Herbert just played his fucking brains out here. So Dallas plays again. They play Washington next week, which in theory should be a great matchup, but I am nervous that, like, again, if Marcus Mariota does not play this game and it's Josh Johnson, could see Dallas hanging like 28 points in the first half, and then them just going Javonte, Malik Davis the entire second half there. Titans, Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, this is brutal here. The Titans beat down the Chiefs. You have Gardner Minshew tears ACL. So the third string, Chris Aludicon, if I'm even saying that right, comes in. This is just even Rashee Rice returning next week. You can't start anybody here. I will say the one lone maybe bright spot, if you want to even put it at that, is Isaiah Pacheco now randomly is like the guy in the backfield. 72% of snaps compared to 26% for Kareem Hunt. He ran 65% of the routes, got the majority of carries. As you can see, 6 catches here. So maybe this just turns into a check down offense here. So yeah, I'm just yapping at this point. Cam Ward, I think, played really, really well in this game. His rookies are playing really well for him. Shimry Dike, Elikai Maynor. Tony Pollard continues to really eat on the ground. I think this is 3 straight 100-yard rushing games, which is really impressive given the state of the Tennessee just team and overall success. So Tony Pollard, good player right now. They play New Orleans next week, which not a pushover defense. So I think he's startable, flexible. I wouldn't touch anybody else in this entire game. Bengals and the Miami Dolphins. Bengals beat up the Dolphins 45-21. So it was kind of a close game in the first half. And then any mistake that Miami made, Cincinnati just made him pay for it. Burrow played lights out, 304. Chase Brown, 3 touchdowns in this game, 1 on the ground, 2 through the air. Jamar Chase got it done, 9 for 109. T. Higgins back from the concussion. Only 3 targets, but turned him into the most he could, 3 for 53 and a touchdown. So really good for Cincinnati. They play a terrible Arizona defense next week that just lost Walter Nolan. They're very, very banged up, so it should be another explosion game for Cincinnati as long as we have good weather out there. Miami, on the other hand, started Quinn Ewers through 2 picks. Not great here. Devon Achane started off red hot, had that like 50-yard touchdown run kind of out the gate, and then was not like uninvolved, but as you could see, 3 catches for 9 yards. Did have like a 35-yard catch called back with a holding penalty, but felt like he was kind of en route to have, 25 touches, but the fact that they just got blown out, he didn't really touch the ball much in the second half. Waddle, 5 for 72. Waller started off really hot too, 3 for 40. He had all that in the first half and then was kind of phased out in the second half in favor of Greg Dulcich. So it was a little bit of a lopsided, weird game script here a bit. So it's hard to say like what's sticky, what's not. But HN, of course, you start every week. I would imagine Quinn Ewers gets another start here. Maybe they just want to see if he could be like their backup long term, even though he didn't play well, obviously, against one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Miami plays Tampa Bay next week. So it is a passing defense that can be had, but good to see, I guess, Waddle get his rocks off a little bit. I'll tell you, I won't be starting Darren Waller next week, I don't think, based on this performance, though. Jets, Saints, Brady Cook just not going to be able to get it done, and it kind of just kills everybody in the Jets offense. Really all I could say there. 29-6 in favor of New Orleans. 3-game win streak for them. Tyler Shuck, 300 yards. Story of this one was, Chris Olave pops the fuck off. No Rashid Shaheed, no Brandon Cooks, no target competition there in New Orleans right now. 10 for 148, 2 touchdowns. Everything is just a throw to Olave or Juwan Johnson. But for fantasy, we were kind of trying to figure out, like, who is the running back to play here, right? Because you had Kamara, who was like the workhorse, and then he goes down, and then Kendra Miller goes down, and then Devin Neal takes over as the workhorse. And then he goes down, and we go, oh, we get this fucking brick matchup versus the New York Jets. Beautiful. Who can we throw into our lineups? It's like Audric Estime, Evan Hull. Both of them get 5 carries. Taysom Hill more than doubles their carries, 12 for 42 on the ground. So he took over as the running back. He catches 4 passes. He also throws a 38-yard touchdown to Chris Olave. So like, I'm hesitant to say that you're about to start 2 tight ends from the Saints. Like, Juwan Johnson, I think is a really rock solid tight end start for most people. Taysom Hill, I guess. I mean, is Kamara going to come back? Is anyone going to come back? I don't know. But they kind of just like showed their cards here. Like, is it more second half or beaten up? Like, give it more Taysom Hill. But they play the Titans next week, which is actually not a very, very it's not an easy run defense to have success against. So I don't know if I'm strong enough to throw Taysom Hill into my fantasy lineup in the championship week, man. I just don't know. I gotta take my sweatshirt off. It's hot as fuck. To this day. But in terms of snaps, it was estimate 51%, I believe. Yeah, 56, Evan Hull 21%. So like if you want to hold on to estimate, you can, I guess, but there's no way you could play him in your fantasy championship after a 5-carry game against the Jets where they beat the shit out of him. It's crazy. Giants versus the Vikings. So JJ McCarthy plays like okay, relatively well, enough for them to get the win. He does bang up his hand though, and Max Brosmer comes in and I don't know that we have any optimism about JJ McCarthy and his hand going forward. So they might have to run out Brosmer, for the start next week against the Detroit Lions, which will be terrible. Running back room. Aaron Jones got hurt, and then Jordan Mason got hurt, but Aaron Jones came back in the game. Jordan Mason looks like he's going to be out for a minute, which means Aaron Jones will get workhorse duty. He's got 21 carries in this one, 2 catches on 3 targets, so he'll be a good start next week. Xavier Scott will take some passing down work. Good to see Justin Jefferson finally get back in the game here. 6'4", 85. Somehow, if you made it to the playoffs and started him, good for you. Giants side of things, I mean, they just went into an insanely run-heavy approach in this one. The Giants and Kafka wanted no part of Brian Flores' pass defense here. I think they started off with 13 or 14 straight runs on offense. It was insane. He didn't have his first completion, Jackson Dart, until like the second quarter, like 4 minutes left in the second quarter is crazy. As someone who was playing against Jackson Dart and Wan'Dale Robinson in his biggest league, fucking loved how that played out. But awful game for Dart. Awful game for any of the receivers in this game. Tyrone Tracy continues to be like a lone bright spot here, though. 16 for 71 on the ground, 2 for 7 through the air. Obviously, no one scored in this one. But Tracy continues to be a really, really good play in terms of opportunity share. Played about 65 to 70% of the backfield snaps in this one. They play the Raiders next week, so he is definitely a flex-worthy player for you. Tampa Bay against Carolina. The Panthers are first in the NFC South, and I fucking hate that, but they are. All right, give credit where it's due. The Panthers take them down 23-20. Baker, another poor game. This offense just looks out of sorts. They're not creative. Feels like every time Baker drops back, it's like he has time, but I don't know if his receivers are just not getting open or what the case is, but it looks ugly out there. Bucky continues to dominate for the most part opportunities, but as soon as they get into the 5 or 10 yard line, he is out the game, and it goes to Sean Tucker, which really caps his ceiling at like a mid RB2, unfortunately, right now, despite, getting 19 carries for 71 yards. And like, if he ends up breaking off a big play, they play at Miami next week. So that's, good weather, good schedule, like should in theory be a good game, but a little bit hard to trust right now. Same thing with Ibuka, 1 for 40, terrible. Chris Godwin, 5 for 30, McMillan, 2 for 15. And for Ibuka, he actually ran the fewest routes out of all of the Buccaneers receivers in this one, which was like the first time all year. Godwin, 87%. Mike Evans, 80%. Jalen McMillan, 63%. And Ibuka, 4th on the pecking order there. As per usual, though, Mike Evans continues to be a rock-solid start here. 38% target per route run rate, 36% team target share. So I expect Baker to continue to pepper Mike Evans, and really he's the only one you could trust in this passing game at all. And just a quick reminder, this site right here, fantasylife.com, has just the best tools ever. Now, if you grab a subscription right now before the end of the year, you will get it all the way through the end of next year. So it's like, oh, fantasy season is done. What am I going to do with this? They have a huge amount of draft products, everything throughout the summer, and then you'll get this for a calendar year. So if you go grab a subscription on fantasylife.com, go grab one of their Fantasy Life Plus subscriptions, use code BDGE. When you do so, you'll get 20% off. So again, you'll have it all the way through the end of next year. Carolina, Bryson Tett did their Bryson Tett thing. Nothing out of the ordinary there. The backfield for Carolina is kind of messy. I know this is a relatively tough run defense against Tampa Bay, but there's just really no upside to be had there. I mean, they play Miami next week, who have been a lot better against the ground game second half of the year, but I still feel like it's hard to trust either Rico or Chuba with them in like a 55 to 45, 60-40 split here. Very few explosive plays. Most of their PPR value is just like checkdowns kind of getting them there, but disappointing day for the backfield for sure. I think they're both like RB3 flex plays. Jacksonville, Denver. All right. I'm ready to admit it. Trevor Lawrence looks fucking awesome. Trevor Lawrence looks really good. And now that he's done it in Denver against his Denver pass defense, like, yep, nothing else I could say here. T-Law, 279, 3 touchdowns through the air, another touchdown on the ground. Travis Etienne dominates backfield touches. Parker Washington is playing like Deebo Samuel. That was actually, I went back and looked at my write-up on Parker Washington as like a prospect, and I said that he was closer to, there's a lot of people, this is a weird comp because a lot of you guys are not even going to remember him, but Amari Rodgers coming out of, I think it was Clemson, people thought he was like Deebo Samuel, and my comp for Parker Washington was like, he is way closer to Deebo Samuel than he is Amari Rodgers. And you're seeing Parker Washington just be awesome with the ball in his hands. 10 targets in this one, led the team 6 for 145 and a touchdown. Jacoby Myers, 8 targets, but doesn't really get home for you. Brenton Strange scores a touchdown. Brian Thomas absolutely blanked. He was kind of a no-go, stay-away guy this week. He did end up seeing a ton of Patrick Surtain on the other side of things. So when you have like a pure X receiver, you're probably going to see a lot of that coverage. But they play at Indy next week in a dome, possibly without Sauce Gardner again. So if that's the case, I don't really have a problem starting Jacoby, Brian Thomas Jr., Brenton Strange in that matchup at all. Denver side of things, Bo Nix plays decent, pretty good, 352, touchdown, interception, only takes a single sack. RJ Harvey, a huge explosion game. Bunch of big plays, 7 for 5. Wasn't efficient at all on the ground, and then he ripped off a 38-yard touchdown run that was fucking beautiful. That's kind of the name of his game. He's not overly efficient at all, but like he brings this crazy explosion to your offense. So he ends up with 11 touches, 121 yards, and a touchdown. Courtland Sutton gets home, 6 for 86, and a touchdown. Pat Bryant was like brought to the hospital. He got pretty fucked up on a big hit, 8 targets in this one. So that will naturally move more targets over to a guy like Troy Franklin if you are desperate and need a flex for next week. They play at Kansas City, which, you know, third string quarterback, you'll probably have opportunities to make plays on offense. Falcons and the Cardinals. Shout out to Falcons. Legit probably giving the Rams like a fucking, you know, like the 23rd pick next year or some shit for James Pierce Jr. That shit was free. And yeah, he's goated. Kirk, all right. I think the storyline here is Bijan played out of his mind. $160, 70 from scrimmage and a touchdown. Kyle Pitts continues the hot streak. 9 targets, 7 catches, 57 yards, and a touchdown. He continues to be a top 5 streaming option. They do play the Rams next week. Much tougher matchup. Drake London did make his return this week and let a lot of people down. 3 for 27, but he did get 8 targets, and he did play on the majority of the routes, or the majority of the dropbacks here. So don't be overly discouraged if you somehow just survive this week. 83% of the routes, 26% target share, so it just didn't happen. He looked a little bit rusty, a little bit clunky, like was just dropping uncharacteristic balls here. But yeah. Flip side, yeah, I mean, this offense could really get nothing going. Somehow, Elijah Higgins goes 7 for 91, and Trey McBride goes 4 for 27. Just the worst game of the season so far, statistically, for Jacoby Brissett. I guess it was a matter of time, but yeah, I mean, they play at Cincinnati next week, so Trey McBride should have a massive, massive, massive bounce back. Michael Wilson, 2 for 52, does get home with the ridiculous touchdown catch, but underwhelming performance all around. Marvin Harrison Jr. does make his return, but goes 1 for 14. Honestly, if you put him in your lineup this week, that's on you. He plays on about 60% of the routes in this one, 80% for Michael Wilson. Steelers and the Lions. This was, I didn't even talk about the backfield. Sorry. So Michael Carter took over as the starter in this one, ends up getting more touches and more carries and stuff than Amari DiMarcado and Corey Kiner. But you know, it was relatively close. 30 snaps for Carter, 17 for DiMarcado. He got more rushing attempts. He got 11 to the 5 and 6. So combined, they matched him. Ran more routes, 17. But they're clearly using Amari DiMarcado in the obvious passing down situation, and they're giving Kiner a little bit of work there too. So if he were to have gotten, you know, the 5 to 6 carries that Kiner got, then Michael Carter would be in a lot better of a spot. But he's a shaky flex going forward for show. Steelers and the Lions. Crazy ending in this one. Story of the game. Actually, there's multiple stories of the game here. So Aaron Rodgers plays well, but the backfield just goes fucking nuts. Jaylen Warren rips off 2 separate 45-yard touchdown runs. So he goes 14 for 143 and 2 touchdowns on the day. Kenneth Gainwell, 14 touches for 128 yards and a touchdown. Had the most fucking ridiculous 45-yard touchdown catch that you will see this year. So go tweet that or go fucking search his name on Twitter or something like that if you want to see it. Ridiculous. So Kenneth Gainwell continues to be used at an extremely high capacity in the passing game in this offense. They play at Cleveland next week, so that over-under for that game is going to be like 35, something like that. But Cleveland's run defense has been terrible since Malik Collins has went out and got ripped apart again by James Cook this week. So I would expect a very heavy dosage of the ground game for Pittsburgh next week, and I think both Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell are playable. Now, who probably won't be playable for you is DK Metcalf, as he reached over into the stadium stands and he punched a fan in their jaw, which was not a great business move for him, considering that the Steelers are vying for a playoff push right now. But if I were a DK Metcalf owner, I would expect to not have DK Metcalf next week, as a suspension is very, very likely coming. On the flip side, Detroit has now put themselves in a position where the playoffs are very, very difficult to get in. I believe they have like a 6% chance to get in. Goff, 364-3 through the air. Jahmyr Gibbs somehow runs for 2 yards on 7 carries, but he does get home through the air, 10 for 66 and a touchdown. J-Mo has a decent day. Amon-Ra St. Brown kind of has a disappointing day. Nothing really like fantasy-wise to take away from for the Lions outside of, they lose and their playoff hopes are kind of dwindling. They're at Minnesota next week, so tough pass down schedule for them. Texans and the Raiders. So the Texans end up handling business barely, 23-21. Geno Smith, 202 through the air. The story of the Raiders game was obviously Ashton Jeanty breaks away a 51-yard run for a touchdown, a 60-yard pass for a touchdown, ends up with 190 from scrimmage on 25 touches and 2 touchdowns. So highly doubtful that anyone with Jeanty was actually in the fantasy playoffs at this point, but huge game from him. Good to see. They get the Giants next week, so it could be another back-to-back performance where they build a little bit of a momentum going into next year. But, I mean, this is what Ashton Jeanty could be. Unfortunately, they still need a complete overhaul on offense. You need fucking 3 new offensive starting linemen for me to have confidence in Jeanty next year. But the talent is obviously just going to be kind of marinating in his body until the rest of his supporting cast allows him to unleash it a bit. On the flip side, underwhelming statistical performance from everyone in the Texans passing offense. And then they play at LA next week, the Chargers, so not necessarily a huge bounce back spot. The backfield without Woody Marks, who got in a limited practice on Friday, so it does seem like he's probably trending to return next week. It was more in favor of Jawar Jordan again for the second week in a row. 46% of the snaps compared to 33% for Nick Chubb. Dominated carries 15-6, ran more routes than everybody. So, if Woody Marks does not play, then maybe you can make a case for Jawar Jordan. But right now, I think it's probably a stay-away situation, unfortunately, between Woody Marks, Nick Chubb, Jawar Jordan next week. And then we had Sunday Night Football. The Patriots take down the Ravens, clinch their playoff spot, 28-24. Drake May, 380 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. First game of his career going over 300 passing yards, which is fucking crazy, but it's the truth. Biggest takeaway here for fantasy, Trayvon Henderson leaves really early, leaves a lot of owners holding the bag on this one with a concussion. So this is going to be a speed run to see if he can clear for next week, because they've got a great fucking matchup against the New York Jets. So on paper, would have been beautiful for your fantasy championship. In his absence, obviously, Ramondre Stevenson operates as the bell cow here. He's the only other running back with a single carry on the day. So if Trayvon Henderson, again, 50-50 chance for guys with concussion to clear for the following week. If he misses, Ramondre Stevenson's going to be like a top 20 option at worst, probably top 15, because he's going to be a consolidated 20-touch guy against one of the worst defenses in the NFL on one of the best offenses in the NFL. Stephon Diggs pops off. Kyle Williams scores a touchdown. Hunter Henry scores a touchdown. So very, very all over the place with the pass catchers in New England, but I think most of them are probably startable again, or at least the relevant ones are probably startable against the Jets next week. Other side of things, I don't even know where to start really. Lamar Jackson leaves the game with a back injury, took like a knee to the back ribs area. Came out today, said it was a back contusion, and he is day-to-day. So we'll have to see if he can clear before Green Bay next week. They are in Green Bay in week 17, still in the playoff hunt. So, like, very, very much need him to suit up. Derrick Henry has a huge game, 18 for 128 and a touchdown, or 2 touchdowns, sorry. Does lose a fumble, which, like, has started to become a theme for Derrick Henry in Baltimore. Keaton Mitchell gets a lot of playing time. I don't think Derrick Henry had a touch, after 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So they just went away from him. Just a sloppy all-around performance from Baltimore. Weird coaching decisions, injuries, ugly. If Snoop Hundley is the quarterback for them at Green Bay, I don't really want a part of anyone in this passing offense. Zay Flowers has a good game, 7 for 84, 18 on the ground, plus a rushing touchdown. So, like, if you had him in your lineup, he kind of helped you get to the next week, but don't know if he's going to be usable if Lamar Jackson is not playing. Should see a heavy dosage of Derrick Henry, but that's a tough matchup when the defense is going to be zoning in on you. Plus, you're playing against Green Bay in Lambeau, and that's a very, very good run defense. So, that will be it for the Week 16 recap. And honestly, I don't know if I'm going to be doing another one of these this year because I'm not going to be doing Week 18 fantasy content. And it's like, do I do a recap of Week 17? Maybe. If I win your Idiot League Mates next week, I'm in the championship. If I win, then maybe I'll do a celebratory recap. Maybe we'll pop some fucking champagne on a fucking Monday morning at 11 a.m. You know what I'm saying? Get the party started early. You tell me. If you want to recap. But honestly, by the lack of thumbs up in this video, tells me that you don't want to recap. 54 thumbs up. We got 500 people in here right now watching. That is disgraceful. You are despicable. You are despicable. All right, I'm actually going to wrap out of here, though. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. As always, tomorrow we'll have the waiver wire video. On Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you will get your running back, wide receiver videos out there before Christmas Day. Same thing as Thanksgiving. Love y'all. I'm out of here. Smoochies. Good luck in Week 17 if you're still around.